This is one of the most important criminal law cases in recent years. This case changed the way that courts will deal with delays in criminal trials. This is R. v. Jordan, 2016 SCC 27-201612, CR 631. The facts of this case are as follows. Mr. Jordan was charged with 2 counts of murder in 2009. The preliminary inquiry began in February of 2010, but it was delayed for a number of reasons. One of the reasons was because the defense had not filed a full array of disclosure until very late in the day. That being said, the preliminary inquiry did not conclude until June of 2014, and then it took another 2 years for the matter to actually go to trial. In April of 2016, Jordan's trial began and it lasted for 4 months. So really, from the time he was charged until the end of his trial was about 7 years. Now this delay was concerning, so Jordan brought a motion before the trial judge asking for a stay of proceedings under Section 11B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which says everyone has the right to be tried within a reasonable time. The motion was dismissed by the trial judge, but the reason why was because the judge found that the delay caused by the preliminary inquiry was justified since the defense was the one who caused the delay. However, the delay after the preliminary inquiry was completed was not justified. But even though the judge found that Jordan's right under Section 11B of the Charter was infringed, he refused to grant a stay of proceedings because he believed that the remedy of conviction should only be used in the clearest of cases. This appeal went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. So what is the legal principle at large in this case? Well, when an accused person's right to a trial within a reasonable time under Section 11B of the Charter is infringed, what should the court do? Should they just simply grant a stay of proceedings like the conviction in this case, or should they consider other factors before granting a stay? At the trial level, the test that is used to determine whether there has been a violation of the right to a trial within a reasonable time is the Jordan two-step test. The first step requires the court to determine what is the length of the delay that can be considered as reasonable, and that is done by looking at a number of factors, such as the seriousness of the offense, the nature of the delay, and the reasons for the delay. If the court concludes that the delay is unreasonable, then they move on to the second step where they ask the question, was the delay a necessary part of the process? In other words, was it a fair and necessary trade-off for the benefit of the process? However, in this case, the Supreme Court of Canada found that this two-step approach was not properly articulated and was not satisfactory. So they created a new framework for applying Section 11B of the Charter. They said that instead of looking at a number of different factors, we should look at the delay as a whole and ask the question, is the delay as a whole reasonable? If it is, then there is no violation of the Charter. If it's not, then the court must ask the question, was the delay a fair and necessary sacrifice of the right to a trial within a reasonable time to accommodate a legitimate and substantial procedural or substantive value? In other words, was the delay a fair and necessary part of the process? In reaching their decision, the court said that Section 11B of the Charter is a right that is to be liberally interpreted in favor of the accused. And also, courts cannot simply focus on the length of the delay. Instead, courts must have regard to all the circumstances surrounding the delay and also the impact of the delay on the right to a trial by jury. In this case, the Supreme Court of Canada found that the delay was not reasonable. However, they found that it was a fair and necessary part of the process. Therefore, there was no violation of the accused's rights under Section 11B of the Charter. As a result, the conviction was upheld. So what is the significance of this case? Well, this case confirms that the courts will not lightly grant a stay of proceedings for a breach of the right to a trial within a reasonable time. However, this case does give us some clarity on the factors that courts will take into account when determining whether a stay of proceedings should be granted. Also, I would argue that this case tilts the balance of the Jordan two-step test towards the accused because now courts have to look at the delay as a whole. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button because it really helps out. Also, you can download the full text of this decision and read it for yourself. There is a link in the description below. Thanks for watching.